Okay, that's,
Just switch the computer.
thank you.
I think.
Hey everyone, we're back again. Thank you for hanging with us for this session. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen since we are recording now. And we're going to jump in. Oh, yes, we'll go ahead. We're going to enable
And
that transcription, but I'm going
you're going to close that and then close, right. Hide,
hide subtitle.
and then close that because it'll cover the menus.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just making sure we can access everything. All right. So,
There we go.
all right. So we're gonna tackle groups today. So, as I think everyone in this session was here before. So I will assume that you are all logged into your Brightspace accounts. And Casey, as always, thank you. Adding in the link there if you are not. So oswego.edu/mylearning, you can go ahead and enter in your single sign-on, your Laker.id, ID, and it will bring you to your course. So I'm going to actually jump into one of my fall semester courses here.
And
Set up
when
a
you're
group.
in the course, so go to course tools and course admin.
Yeah.
We're already there.
Yeah,
so.
we're already here. So if you navigate, once you get into a course to this top menu, you'll select course admin, which is the page that we are currently on. So under learner management, we're going to select groups. So go ahead and click on that. And so I created a test group here. So I'll kind of talk a little, we're going to start it from scratch again. But essentially I created a group just a little bit ago that I had automatically assigned the users in my course. Currently there's 15 students enrolled in my course. And I decided that I would have groups of 3. And so as you can see, there are 5 groups that were generated from that. So this is what
And we
it
have
will
no
look
idea
like.
what that last one is.
Yeah, we don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. I'm not even sure I understand what it means, but we're gonna just create a test group on our own. And so reasons you would want to have groups. If you are creating a group project or assignment or some kind of, really any course activities that you want students to be able to share, they will have, the option to share files together, on Brightspace. They can participate in discussions that are specific to their group. And you can even have them submit assignments and their work as a group together.
So basically the tools available for assessing the work would be discussion forums. And if you create it once, it's shared automatically to each of the groups that are created.
Mhm.
And similarly, you create an assignment and it's automatically shared with all members of the group. So you don't have to replicate this in each and every group. So it makes things pretty easy to do. So
yeah.
we should probably start from scratch.
Yeah, so we're gonna create a new category, right? Is that correct? Yeah. So we're gonna call this group for
Workshop.
workshop. Yeah, group for workshop, right? So you can add a description here. This description's for yours, for your information. And then you can decide what the enrollment type is. So you may ask students to self-enroll in groups. You might ask students, you might want to have an auto enrollment of groups. So if you want groups of, I know I have 15 students in this class, so I could do, groups of 5, for instance, and ask that, these would be auto enrolled. So students would be randomly assigned to those groups. You can have single user, member specific groups. We talked a little bit about this in journals earlier this week, that if you wanted to create a discussion forum that was only available to an individual student, so that you as the instructor would be the only one able to view that those responses, you could create single user groups. as
Because
well.
unlike Blackboard, there is no journal tool in Brightspace, but the workaround is you create single user groups. And then each student is in a discussion forum with you. So you get to read their journals, but no one else can see them.
Yeah, so that's an option if you are someone who has used journals in the past and relied on those in your courses. But I'm going to go ahead and just determine, or just suggest that I want groups with 5 users each. I can restrict the enrollment to students in this course. You do need to edit this prefix because it only allows a prefix of up to 40 characters. And so, actually, I don't know if that's going to be.
That should be good.
Yeah, okay. All right, so create that group there. I'm gonna indicate that I want it to that I want Brightspace to auto enroll new users and to randomize users and groups. I can make the category and group descriptions visible to the group members, but it's really for my information, so I won't select
Now,
that.
one case where you might do that is if you have self-enrollment where the groups are going to be working on different topics, then
That's a
you
good
have
idea.
that option. So you could create topic names for the groups and let students assign into them.
That makes a lot of sense. So, I'm also going to select some workspace options for students so I can set up discussion areas. I can set up lockers, and that's just a file sharing. We're still trying to, figure that piece out.
So basically, if they're working on, let's say, a collaborative paper or research paper, they can upload items they're going to use for their bibliography. They could put in documents that have links to resources that they found and share them with everyone in the group. And you as the instructor will be able to see those items.
So I went ahead and I selected a setup locker and set up assignments for, a file submission. And I'm also going to set up a discussion area for them to engage with each other on their, on their project. So Benjamin asked, what is the difference of enrollment type? So, if I didn't know how many students were in my class, like I could say, I could do like 5 groups, right? And there would be 3 students each.
But to answer that question specifically, the issue is if you have self-enrollment, you might have 3/4 of your class in one group and no one in, or very few people in the others. So you can define the second choice there is to have a maximum capacity in the group. So you let people self-enroll, but you may cap the enrollment at 5 or 6 or 4 or something similar. And that way you'll still end up with balanced groups, but it'll be selected in the order in which people join. So if someone is late, the last people to select will have a more limited selection of groups if the others are filled to capacity.
Sorry, I didn't read that full text as like one category option. So Dennis asked, can you move students into different groups, say with Zoom rooms, because I want to make sure groups are heterogeneous. So you could assign, you could manually assign.
And the way you would do, one way of doing it is you would choose a number of groups with no auto enrollments, and then you would manually assign them. Now, the question is, once they are assigned, can you change it? And we haven't tried this yet. I'm not using groups in my class. My summer class is the smallest one I've ever taught. There's only 15 students instead of the usual 50. So I haven't set up groups in the class, but we can try that once the groups are defined.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I went ahead and I selected the setup lockers and the setup assignments. I'm also going to set up the discussion areas here. And so, similar to creating a discussion forum, I can either select a forum that I've already created, or I can set up a new forum through here and, have a new topic that's restricted to the group that's being created here.
And this is just when you get the group started. You can then use the discussion forum tools or the assignment tools, and you have the option of making them available to anyone, or you could make them assigned to specific groups. So if you want to use persistent groups, you do this at the beginning with whatever you have the groups do first, and then you could create things later and attach them to the group. So the group things could be a one-off type activity, or it could be done through the whole semester.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to pick, these options here. You can set them up through the assignment tool and through the discussion forum tool as well. Can you create subgroups?
I think you would have to create separate groups. So you can create multiple groups and students could be members of separate groups, but I think you would have to manually do that. So there is no group tool within the group tool.
I'm going to go ahead and click save. It says my groups are being created in the background. I'll receive a notification. So this next menu, because I had selected those options for creating a discussion as well as the locker and the assignment, these next couple of pages are going to take me through that. So if I want to create.
So if you had self-enrollment where there was different activities, you'd use the first option.
Yeah, so, this is right. Each group has a separate restricted topic. This one, if I had a topic that I wanted all the students to answer, but I wanted them to answer within groups, I could, select this option here. So that's what I'll do. So I will create, and I'm going to go to the next option. File submission.
Yeah, so a paper submission is if you're teaching it face-to-face, students would turn in a paper, you'd grade it on paper, and then you would then enter the grade.
It would, I think it would, does it restrict them from uploading something that you may not want because you've requested it on paper?
I don't think there would be an upload option if you chose paper submission. It basically would create the gradebook thing and the rubric and so forth.
So I'm gonna come back.
But note that every student's quota was cut in half this year because we're really trying to discourage wasting paper and toner and so forth.
Right, so I'm creating a test assignment here that's going to be defined for groups. So I've chosen a group assignment. I already made a previous group, right? So this is, to that question of can students be in multiple groups? They can, so you can decide which group you're going to create this assignment for. So I'm going to keep the group for workshop. And, this is that file submission that we talked about. I want them to upload a document. So I'm going to keep this file submission here. I'm going to allow them to upload as many things as they want. So this is the same assignment page, setup page that you'd receive elsewhere. I don't have any categories right now for the grade book. So I can create a new category, I suppose. I think. Save. We're going to make it out of 10. Can create a new grade item. I don't have the grade category here, so I'd have to, change that at some point. Okay, I'll just save that. So, just as a note, the grade categories can be really helpful when you're weighting grades. So if this is a part of a larger group project, I will have wanted to go into the grade book before I set this up so that I could create the category for that, so that when I linked it, I would be able to select that category. So it would nest in that category in my grade book. So I didn't do that for now. if you have a rubric, you can add a rubric. You can always create one in a new window. You can create anonymous marking like you could in Blackboard. And I'm just going to go ahead and create that. Okay, and the lockers were automatically created. So reminder that I had 15 students enrolled in this class, and I requested that 5 students be enrolled in each group as an auto enroll. So that leads to 3 lockers. So I'm going to click done. And we'll just save. So that kind of brought us through different group options. And I'm not quite sure what the processing, what this option is here, but
Maggie, if your class went to say 16 students, would it auto create 3 groups of 5 and then 1 group of 1, or would it have distributed evenly? You know?
That's a good question. Oops, I shouldn't have opened that, but.
Well, let's look at the last one though, because it looks like it puts students in there and I have no idea why.
Yeah, so there are students in this last one. I'm not sure why they ended up there. I only asked for 3
There may be a
groups.
bug there, yeah.
Yeah. Why it created 4s.
This is new to us. We haven't actually used it in class.
Maybe
and-
I actually have 16 students. And
Oh,
maybe
you
that's
do?
why it's confused.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
It was capped at 15, so that's news to me. So that's probably why that occurred. So if I
So it
You
looks
know,
like it would distribute them evenly, or as evenly as.
Click on the
possible.
enroll unit. So this shouldn't release any data that we don't need. Can we move students? It looks like.
it looks like I can, I
'Cause
can,
that
I
will
can
answer-
select a
yeah.
student here. I can remove them from there.
So once you create it, you could shift them around, going back to Dennis's question. I think with
Yeah.
Dennis's.
Scroll down and show the students' names.
I think so, because
Okay.
there's no great information.
Okay.
now.
All right, so,
Oh, well, no,
no.
because it's
their
got the
IDs.
ID,
Okay.
although that's a global ID, but.
Well, okay, so we're
We'll
gonna,
delete that from
yeah,
the-
we're gonna
the video.
delete, yeah, so just to recap, this menu, so when you do go into the,
So let's say that if you go to the enrollment, if you go to the enroll menu, you do have the option of moving groups if you don't like the assignment, if you want to create more heterogeneous groups and so forth. So
yeah,
you do have that ability.
yeah, so you can change people, you just wanna click on the chevron to enroll users, and then you can shift students from one group to another. So we'll take that previous part out for everyone. All right, so I wonder if this is an admin tool for the instructor to view all students at once. Yeah, I would say that this isn't the student view for sure. This is a managed groups view. Was that your question, Holly?
Let me unmute myself here. No, which wasn't my question. It was just you were wondering what that 4th group was, and I was just hypothesizing.
Oh, I
That-
see what you mean. Okay,
That
yeah.
it was
I-
maybe like for us, for the instructor to, be able to just look at all of them and not have to go into the individual groups to see what, each group or each student in each group was doing.
And instructors can see all the documents that students have uploaded into their folders, if that's something you wanted to assess. And you grade this using the quick eval tool, just like you would any other work that has been created.
Mhm. And I can't remember if this part is going to get cut from the video, but this last group down here exists because I got the number of students wrong in my class. I think there are actually 16 students in the class, hence the creation of a 4th group. So
But you
just-
specified the number of groups, I thought, wasn't it? Or did you
I said
specify the
groups
size?
of groups
Groups of
of 5 is what I said. And so it was not, I guess, did not want to create a group of just one person.
And both times when this was done, the name of the last group had this strange string.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a bit of a bug in creating groups. I think you can rename that though, so that it
I'm
would.
wondering
match
if
the
it's
other name.
including you in one of the groups. as the instructor or something, maybe,
It should not.
as a 16th
But
person. I mean, it shouldn't, but
Yeah, we don't want to
it-
show that because we
yeah,
already
'cause
have
it-
to edit some stuff out.
Yeah,
but-
because if I go into here, it's gonna show us who the students are and it has ID numbers, so we're gonna not do
I was
that.
just
But
saying it for your, so you
Oh,
can look
yeah.
into it later. I know you can't do it. So.
yeah, I'll check into that later. So it does show, so when you do go to check out the files that students are sharing with each other, it looks like you can access this here. I'm gonna hope that, okay, I'm not sure why I'm unauthorized to access that. But
Well, there still seem to be some bugs. It may
Yeah, a
be
couple
because there are no group files yet.
it could be, yeah, but there's.
But still, you should still be able to see that.
I should be able to see okay, so these are the discussion topics that were created. Should be able to go in here.
And you won't actually see anything because no one has posted, but
But if I go back to like discussion list, right, I should be able to see the groups that I've created.
Mhm.
This is also showing the groups that I created at a previous time too, so.
and by previous time, that means like 20
Like
minutes ago.
20 minutes ago, before I made the more recent one, so. So yeah, there's, list of discussion topics. Again, none of the threads or posts have been created yet for that. Did you want to add anything?
Well, and the main thing is you'd evaluate it just like anything else. It would show up in a quick eval under the assignment title, whatever it is in the grade book, and you just go through and grade it all. And with the group assignments, we're assuming with a group assignment tool, all the students, I believe, would get the same grade. If you want to evaluate them separately, you'd need to do that through some other mechanism. So that's really all we have. We haven't done that much with this ourselves, except to explore how it works. So maybe we could just leave this open to questions first about groups, but about anything else. And
Yeah.
if we don't know the answer, we'll try to figure it out. And, again, we're all new at this.
Okay.
I don't see the option of
I did not see that option either, Casey.
No, I'm looking around at it because we manage upwards of 350 students in 20 plus different sections. And so manually doing that, I don't want to do. But it looks like admins might be able to do it. And so the extended learning CTS folks might stay busy for us, but anybody that has done the upload business with groups, I wanted to make it aware that right now, it does not look like you can do that.
Yeah, and there's some settings that are set at an initial level that may change. And actually, even right now, a lot of the settings are not done at the campus level. They can only be done at the SUNY level. So, and that should start changing as things get a bit more settled and as everyone learns more about the system.
Hopefully before the Friday before classes begin.
One hopes. Yes. We got off to a really late start, but things did come together just in time for the summer session. And that was beyond the campus, that those issues were at the SUNY level and with the whole contract negotiation issue and with some legal challenges coming from Blackboard and so forth about the whole process. So everything was shifted back several months in the process from where it was originally planned. So it's come together remarkably well. And again, my class is going pretty nicely. I'm not using the group tool, but everything else seems to be working pretty well. Any errors were my errors and not the systems.
Holly has a question.
So I have a really broad question, and it's not about groups at all, but since this is our last hurrah workshop for a while, in the course tools, like in the interface that's already set up, it's listed as quizzes. I know quizzes is like the catch-all for like all tests and the traditional type of assessment. In some of my classes, I actually use quizzes, so it's fun, but in some of my classes, I don't use quizzes, I use tests, unit tests. And I know I can rename them in, whatever, but is there a way to rename it in the actual nav bar? So the
Not in the
student,
nav guard, but it won't, students won't see what it is. For example, I have assignments in my class every other week that are actually using the test or the quiz tool. And students see it in the grade book under assignments. So what matters in the category for students view is basically going to be the, if you go to the grade book and choose manage, what will happen, course admin and then grades, you'll see how it will look in terms of the categories that students see. Grades, and then it's going to pop up and we'll have to edit that out again. And then once it gets there, network in the library is really slow because we've got at least 3 other users in the building. Manage grades.
Gonna go to manage.
so in the grade book, it'll show up with whatever I call it, whatever I name it.
So if you notice under assignments, each of those, with one exception, is actually showing up as a quiz tool from our perspective. And I'm not sure why the other one isn't, but the assignments from students' perspective show up in the assignment category. So you could call items tests, or you could call them quizzes. And from the student standpoint, the labels on them and the gradebook category would label them in the way that you'd like them to be labeled.
Okay, so I don't know why I'm so hung up on this wording, but like quiz to me implies, a short, maybe multiple choice, true, false, whatever. And unit test kind of implies a big deal, right? So that's why I'm kind of a little hung up on this terminology.
So you can, basically the quiz tool just means you're receiving information from the students in questions, which could be essay questions, multiple choice, matching, multiple select, numeric. Doesn't really matter what the actual items are. Okay.
Right, because like you have midterm exam, which obviously implies, a bigger deal than a little, chapter quiz, let's say. So I get the, like, I can name it whatever I want to name it, but the students still have to go to the word quiz to find it. Is that correct?
If we go to, let's go to my module 3, go to content.
Yeah, so if you go, so students are just gonna see it as like another page that they've clicked through. So if
So they're just going to see it in the module with whatever I call it. So they're not going to actually have to like click on the nav bar and go to quizzes to get to it.
They don't need to click any of that. You notice where it says assignment 2? It's showing up for us as a quiz, but they will click on it. It gives them some instructions. They have to read something. Actually, in this case, they're listening to a podcast, and then that one's not open, so you can click on it. The assignment 2 one.
Okay.
It should be open though.
No,
Actually,
just click on
change it, make it
visibility.
visible. Sorry about that. I messed up because it's due on Friday. Okay. So basically, preview it. This is what it looks like from a student perspective. It doesn't, well, it does say quiz details apparently, but basically, this is what it will look like. And
Okay, that's fine. I mean, if it is that, then, and if there's no way to change it, then so be it. But
basically, that's the name of the tool. And because from the standpoint of the system, a quiz, an exam, and some assignments are really all the same. It's just what you put in them that differentiates it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Holly, just let me kind of relate back because I know you use Blackboard. In Blackboard, when I did a homework assignment or a quiz, or if I had done a test, in Blackboard, it was always called a test.
That's right.
Right.
And so in D2L Brightspace, in the DLE, it's always going to be called a quiz, regardless of what you intend it to be.
Right.
The format or the content or the programming behind the scenes, it's based on a quiz in the DLE. in Blackboard, it was called a test, regardless of what you intended it to be or where you put it within your course.
Okay.
I would just use this, when you're creating your assignment or exam or quiz, whatever it is you're intending it to be, I would just make that clear in the instructions for students. Is it an exam of this many questions and this kind of time allotment?
Oh, yeah.
That way
They'll
they have
know
context.
in the units that it's a unit test or it's a whatever I call it. But I just didn't want them to be confused because of the word quiz.
They will interpret, if you have the word quiz one and then, major exam one or comprehensive final exam, they'll get a feel for that and you can describe it, and you could even put, as Megan just suggested, and it's really good practice. I haven't done that yet. Estimated time requirements for completing.
Yeah.
You could also go over this in your syllabus a little bit too, if you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I intend to do all those things. I just, like I said, again, I don't know why I'm so hung up on the word, but it's annoying to me for some reason.
Well, this is every learning management system I've ever worked with, and I've worked with 5 of them now. So basically, the assignment type thing in here is essentially a Dropbox, and anything where you're asking students structured questions in some way, where they have multiple questions to answer in some format, is either an exam or a test or a quiz, whatever the learning management system happens to use.
Yeah.
So that's something, it has more to do with how the input is being received and what. If it's received as one file, then it's, in this case, an assignment. If you're asking students for separate questions in different contexts with some types of restrictions on them, then it's a quiz.
Right.
But the labels you use in the discussion in the syllabus and the weights that you assign to the thing, it will give students some indication of how much is involved with it.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on to question number 2 I have for you guys. Just those of you that have, like Maggie and John, I know you're both doing live summer courses with D2L right now. Did you find that would you recommend, or what were your thoughts on creating the content from the ground up using the course admin, the course builder tool, versus seeing how it migrates over and just kind of going with however it migrates over with a few tweaks, obviously?
Yeah, so, for me, my decision was to build it from the ground up. For a fully online course, I wanted to create a different user experience for my class than what migrated over from Blackboard. So, I started creating HTML files, whereas I had all of my module content formatted through Google, through the Google Suite. And so, what got migrated over were links to all of those things. So I could have done that. I could have kept that. But I wanted to create something different for my students. Also because I teach this class regularly during winter and summer sessions. And so I wanted to, I wanted to play around in Brightspace a bit to get used to it. And so I decided that for my course needs, it was easier to build from the ground up. And I did use that course admin, course builder option to kind of create a grand structure of my class. And then I moved into the content tab to actually edit the individual content there.
And a lot depends on how much you have. If you click on that content tool, you'll see that in my course, I have a total of somewhere down here, there's 221 files, and those are HTML files, some of which students need, some of which are optional. And I have about 600 or 700 images with alt text that are used in diagrams embedded throughout this whole thing. And if I were to build all that from the ground up, it would take me probably 4 or 5 months. And I had about a week and a half to get this course open from the time I got access to it. So maybe it was 2 weeks, but it wasn't really a lot of time. And so I didn't really have much choice, but I will say each and every module is being reformatted. So if you go to, well, if you look there, you notice the image at the top is something I found a public domain image that seemed to work a little bit with labor supply, maybe not so much in that case as in some of the others. And I went through and I reformatted all the text to match the style of the templates and so forth. Everything is in Lato 19 point, which is what they recommend. And each week I'm spending about 4 or 5 hours updating the module so that it matches the style and design. So a lot depends on just how much content you're porting over. If you have a limited amount and there's not a lot of math typing, there's not a lot of images, it may be easier from building it from the ground up. Now, in many files, what I've done is that, well, Blackboard added a tremendous amount of formatting and made the format in the HTML files that came over incredibly ugly, especially those that were originally created on a Mac, because it has Apple font and so forth as a tag on every block of text. So what I did in many cases is I would grab a block of text and then paste it back as unformatted text and reformat it in the editor, getting rid of a lot of the crap that Blackboard added to the HTML, just making it a bit cleaner so it would reformat nicer. And what some people will do is they'll paste it in Notepad or in Notes, depending on what operating system you're working with. But in many cases, just blocking the text. Actually, if we go to, let's go to one of the later modules just to show. Let's go to, module 11. In there, if we go to the mini lectures, just open any one of those. These have not been ported over. So
they have been ported.
Well,
over,
let me
right?
rephrase it. They have been ported over, but this is the
You haven't
Blackboard.
fixed them yet.
So if you click on this and choose edit HTML, what I would do is I would just block the whole thing, Control A, and then hit the font. It's already Lato, so that did come over, and then change it to 19. And that alone will make it look a lot more like everything else. This is a really short and simple file, and it formatted reasonably well.
You want me to save and close?
So yeah, save and close. So that's the type of thing I would do. In other cases, it required a lot more, and actually, well, in some cases involved editing some of the HTML when there were some strange things in there. So,
so yeah, it's a little bit of cleanup if you want it to have a consistent look, and to kind of use the recommended font and font size. The recommendations for that are because it's accessible, and it carries over well to the mobile device as well. So that's, they really do recommend you change that font to Lato in 19 point.
very little of the work we had created earlier was done in 19 point font, but on a mobile device, it's much more easy to read, and it just makes things a lot more responsive.
That is very good to know information. That just that little tidbit of Lato 19 point is, where would I have found that? Like, is there a
Right now, these are all in a folder. The other thing I'll do is I will take them and put them all in an accordion file. So there will be this one folder. And these are optional readings that supplement the textbook reading on issues that students may find confusing and so forth.
yeah, I guess I'm just, and forgive me for monopolizing the time, everybody else. But my courses haven't migrated for fall yet, so I'm still kind of waiting for that to happen to see how it comes over. But what I did was I left one, because I teach 2 sections of async, so I do have a lot of stuff, which is why I want to migrate it over. But I left one folder completely empty, so that one section will just be empty. So if I decide to go the course builder route, I'll just have that one empty, and then The first course will just get migrated over, and I can just, once that's done and migrated and prettied up and etc.
Yeah,
I
it is.
want to use the accordion stuff. I'm really excited about a lot of the features that Brightspace has to offer. I'm just not sure if I'm going to have enough time to like do it for fall, so I might end up just waiting until the spring to do it. So that's kind of where I'm like in limbo on, what should I do and what shouldn't I do. But
And if you have two sections of the course, build one of them, and then you can use a course copy and it will make an
Right.
exact copy.
Right,
You don't have to
that's what I
export it
was-
and import it. It works really easily.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because that's why I left one blank, and then in the fall, Blackboard, I left one just completely blank, so it just migrates over as a blank. And then in the other one, I, changed all the due dates and did everything that I would do from semester to semester, so that it's kind of like ready to go as much as I can in Blackboard, so that when it gets migrated over, it comes over however it comes over. And so that way I can just, if I decide to just make the edits and the one that's ready to go, then I can just copy it to the blank one, or vice versa. So, all right, thanks for your thoughts. Sorry for monopolizing all of the questions.
No, not at all. They were really good questions. Dennis?
Yeah, this came up yesterday about just kind of a workaround. Like, for example, like you can't necessarily copy one thing from one section to another. So I learned if you do play around with the local sandbox or whatever it's called, you can attach or download a zip file, and then it will add it to the bottom. So in other words, you could play with a rubric, create a rubric in the sandbox, and you can't copy it, or you don't have to download. You can, well, you actually are downloading it, but you can add it to the existing, and then this way you could just add it to both sections.
Yes.
But create the rubric as something else. That's all.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can do it from one course and then import it into the other one too. Until we get the learning object repository set up and know what its capabilities are, that's probably the easiest way to move things from one section to another. And you got a lot of granularity there. In Blackboard, at least originally, you had to export all the tests. Now that's changed, so you could just export one, but you can do that with pretty much any item here, that when you choose to do an export from the course, it could be a single rubric. Save it as a file, import it, and then just put it wherever you want it. And that's also true, as you said, for the sandbox, if you've been working in that.
Any other questions? I navigated over here just so you can see that accordion menu. So you can, define templates for your HTML files, and, there's, it's a pretty easy option to do. So it helps just keep a lot of information easily digestible for students. Just because we had talked about this before.
And we should note that the instructional designers, I believe, beginning today, will be holding office hours
In the afternoon.
and beginning next week, they're going to have space upstairs in the library. And I think it's in Speaker's Corner, that big room up there, where there will be some coffee and tea and some snacks provided by the provost, and where people can come together and work together, share questions and so forth.
Oh, also,
John, you got to get some color in these photographs, though. Look a little white.
This one, yeah.
I should.
And I was looking.
I should also mention that I don't believe they're ongoing at this moment, but there will be some additional webinars on more advanced material through SUNY's CPD.
Scheduled for later in the summer.
Scheduled for later in the summer. So if you want to learn more on intelligent agents and some of the more advanced tools that are available in Brightspace, definitely keep checking back to the SUNY DLE website for registration information about those later sessions. But again, those were they explained that those would be available later in the summer. So to me, that's sometime after mid-July. But
We're guessing,
we're
yeah.
guessing. That's a complete guess. But just something to kind of keep an eye out for if that's something you're interested in using and learning more about. I think that's to you, John. I think that's a direction to
Yeah,
you.
Casey
to take a break.
suggested we get some rest. Well, I've got 2 meetings later today, and then I'm presenting at a conference in Arizona tomorrow.
Oh my God, I didn't
virtually,
realize. Oh, virtually. I was like, John, what are you
So,
doing?
and then, yeah, and so there's a whole lot of things coming up, but it's a busy time. And it's been an especially busy 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
sorry, we were a little less organized as we progressed through this, or I was at least. Maggie wasn't.
Well, no,
but,
I was certainly equally, if not more, disorganized. But thank you all for hanging in with us. And we'll be masters at this at some point in time, hopefully.
We will
And
know
so,
more, let's say.
we will gain more knowledge because we will be working with this throughout the whole summer with our courses. And so, anything, again, take advantage of the extended learnings, office hours that the instructional designers are holding, and those migration and munchies is what they're calling their events next week to talk about migration and help people. I think it's their intention that people will bring, their devices with them so that they can show them, any questions hands-on. Take advantage of those opportunities, lean on each other. We're happy to help answer questions throughout the
And
summer.
actually, earlier, Dennis raised a good point. In terms of the pictures you choose for images, try to provide diverse representation. I was trying to do that. This was done, I should note, about 11:30 at night. I found this one, and it opened at midnight. So I didn't have much time, but a large part of the focus on this particular module is on changes in the US labor force. And the biggest change in the labor force in the last several decades is a rise in female labor force participation. I wanted a more diverse representation, but one of the problems you find in trying to select images is you want images that work in that banner mode where you've got 200 pixels high by 1200 wide. And many of the pictures that I found that had a really good diverse labor force or good diverse image would not work in that banner format. So in other portions of the course, I do have I will have more going forward. And also I think in the last module, I think I did have a more diverse representation, but that's a really good point. It's a really good way of creating a more inclusive environment. And that image was not ideal.
Yeah, so, I've tried to keep that in mind when I, add my banner images. But of course, this image is, it's not in the right dimensions, but I am a little lazier in that aspect.
Well, part of the issue is if you look at it on a mobile device, it will not display correctly. And the reason for that ratio is it does work across formats.
So I probably need to spend a little more time on that. But yeah, it is definitely something to keep in mind when you're creating an inclusive classroom environment.
I guess that's it. If you have any questions, certainly if you can contact help@oswego.edu, but we're also more than happy to try to answer questions if we can. And in some cases, we'll just refer you to people that we know who may have actually resolved the problem. But we'll do anything we can to help. Play with it,
Thanks so
It's
much.
nice to have the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.